Howdy, howdy.
How are you today?
I'm all right. Just right before I got on, I rubbed my eye, and now it's like burning. So if I'm rubbing my eye a lot, that's why. It's like, ow, what did I do?
Nothing like right before you get on a show, right?
Exactly. That's when it happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's always good.
How are
Well,
you?
I'm good. After I should know by now that after a holiday to think I'm going to have a kind of a quiet, regular week is just not. It's
What,
never that way.
what
So
were you thinking?
it's just I've had people go, so and so wants to meet with us, and so wants to meet with you, and so wants to meet with you, and I'm like, well, check my calendar, and they get back and they're like, there is no space on your calendar, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I kind of know that. So it's just, so we're moving into next week, so we'll see how busy that goes.
yeah.
I'd rather be so busy and my calendar full than me sitting around twiddling my thumbs, wondering what am I going to do? That kind of a deal. So I don't have that problem right now. That is for sure. But I'm excited about this because I've been going out with Jonathan over the last year and a half doing
Yeah.
video and photos, and so we're really going to get into why you even should be creative. Creating videos and tutorials and talk about what that means and how you can do it, and some of the tricks and those kind of things. And I'm really excited about this, mainly because we're seeing just more and more and more video views. I don't know. So I hope I'm not going to be controversial here, but I might be. When I was growing up, it was all about reading. You read everything. The only time you saw video, you just went and watched, NBC, ABC, or CBS. That was about it. We had a couple of local little stations, but and half the time it was fuzz, and you had to go up on the roof and tweak the deal to get the reception and all that stuff. And nobody even thought that you could get a phone out and go, hey, do a dance, do a jig, do a whatever, that kind of a deal. So it's so different now. And people my age, even a little bit younger, that had the same type of experiences, sometimes gets really, really overwhelmed by technology and possibilities and what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, all those kind of things. So I'm hoping this is going to help kind of alleviate some of those fears, and that people also understand that people my age. I talked to one of our customers yesterday. So yesterday, day before, I can't remember now. Um, but she's got a 90-year-old dad that uses an iPhone and an iPad to communicate with her and her brother all the time. He's 90 years old and he just flies on those things. And I'm thinking, wow, that is really, really awesome. So it's not about can you, it's are you willing to learn some of these things? I mean, that really is the question. That
It
really
is.
the question.
And we're at the very beginning of a pretty in-depth conversation. I mean, in other words, I don't think we're going to get to all of the things that we could talk about to cover this subject today. Just looking at the show notes, like the things that we have to cover, I doubt we'll get to everything today, but we'll certainly make a good start. And hopefully with feedback from everyone listening, we'll know where we need to focus more attention and more information coming to you in future um, Spark Lives, just so that we can help you with the things that you really have questions about.
And I just had to put this up there because Mark asked me, are you really that old? And all I'm going to say about that, Mark, is I'm very familiar with Social Security and Medicare and all that good stuff. And that's all I'm saying about those things, okay? That's all you're going to get. So, yeah, I am that old. It is really funny though. I have to tell you, I've had somebody, a kid that I think he's 14, 15 years old, thought I was 40. So yeah, I thought that was pretty good. You thought I was 40. So you know how that goes.
Yeah,
Anyway, we're gonna jump in here because I think it's really, really important to really start talking about some of this stuff. And the thing I really want everybody to know is this. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, and it's not that you need to do everything, but I want to point out just a few things in here that I think are really, really important to whatever you choose to do, and go from there. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is having an effective video creation. So Carter, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I think effective in this case really means two things. So I think you got to know your audience. Number one, making sure that we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But making sure that you're addressing the content to the right people. The right content for the right people. That's a pretty big deal. But being effective, I think, also means really making sure that you're like keeping it topical, keeping it focused on the things that are of most importance to your listeners and followers, the people who are finding that content. We love the strategy of talking about, sort of like from a question standpoint, like customers are asking us, their clients ask us these questions all the time. And so we use those questions as ways of kind of forming up the topics that we want to talk about. And then we try to keep it really limited to just focusing on one topic per episode, so that it's, I think that's more effective to do that than try to do some big, massive, podcast that hits on 15, 20 different topics.
No, I think that's very true. The other thing I think that we need to talk about when we talk about an effective video creation is planning. There's so many times that we have gone out and, beforehand, I have a shot list. I have all this stuff, here's what we'd like, here's where we'd like to go, yada, yada, yada. And the people that actually have it planned out, even if we're having to do some mock things, to show process and show those things at maybe one of the technicians' house or a CSR's house or something like that, we're actually showing the real process. So it's not like we're not showing the real thing, but it's all planned out so that everything they want gets covered during the time that we're there. So if we're not there, it's the same planning. It's the step-by-step creation. And what do you want to show? What is important in the process? What are people asking you about? And then try to pare that down to where you're not going on and on and on and on and on, kind of like I'm doing right now.
It's like writing a good recipe. I mean, you have all the ingredients necessary to make the recipe, and you've got to include all of those ingredients and then talk through step by step how to combine those ingredients or what to do with those ingredients in order to create the desired result. An effective video starts with a recipe for a desired result, right? We want a video that accomplishes this for us. It explains this. How do we get there? What shots do we need? Who needs to be in those shots? What angles do we need? How are we going to make sure that we're telling the story that in the end, that video is successful at what it set out to be?
And I'll go in so far as to say, when you're looking at your trucks, when you're looking at your crew, when you're looking at all those things, if you're putting out on your Facebook, your website, whatever it is, that you're the cleanest crew, we're going to go in and we're going to clean up after this and we're going to do that, and we're always, yada, yada, yada. And then what you show is a rusted out truck or van, and everybody is in a different t-shirt. It may have the same logo, but there's no standard of uniform. There's no and t-shirts are fine. I mean, people don't mind that people are in t-shirts. So I'm not saying about that, but if there's 5 different colors and whatever, and they're dirty, and, people have their hats on backwards and some, sideways. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff. Think about that, because you're showing, as a home service provider, you're basically saying, we want permission to come in your home. So you have to look at and be very objective when you start doing video and say, okay, what do we want to show? How do we want to come across? What is our brand? What are we saying about ourselves that we need to prove through photos and videos? So those are all things that have to be considered.
And what are the deal breakers? The
Yeah,
things that absolutely, if it happens in the shot, we don't show it. I mean,
exactly.
I've been surprised at how many people think, well, it was a really good shot, except for my technician in the background who was, flicking a cigarette butt into the client's front yard. But if you overlook that, it's fine. Well, guess what the client's going to see? Guess what every person who watches that video is going to see that and think, I don't want these people in my home. I don't want these people in my yard.
Well, which brings us to understanding your audience.
Yes.
Because the truth is, that is understanding your audience. Know what your audience wants. What does your audience want to see? What is the audience you want to attract? I mean, these are all the things you have to think about. Now, let's talk a little bit about there's a couple of different audiences here that I think people need to be aware of. Up in our area, I've been told that people don't drive by your houses anymore, the city, to do any kind of appraisals. They just look on like Zillow or Redfin or RealTracs, whatever they have available, and they get an idea of your house and they do appraisals from that. And then if you get your appraisals that don't like it, you can go in and argue about it. Well, here's what insurance companies and OSHA and all the rest of those types of companies do. What are they looking at today? They're looking at your Facebook profile. They're looking at your Instagram. They're looking at your website. They're looking at all the pictures and the videos that you have out there. So if you aren't, abiding by OSHA regulations, you're going to get a visit. If if the insurance company sees that you're up on a roof or whatever, and you're a roofing company and half your staff doesn't have the proper, headgear, harnesses, all that kind of stuff, you could very well, get visited and your insurance is going to go up. And when you argue with them, what are they going to do? They're going to pull up pictures of your technicians, your people on a roof that's doing that. So these are all the things you have to be careful about and know that this is where people are going to look at you. So yes, there's the audience that you want to hire you, but there's also an audience out there that is looking over you. Whether you like it or not, that's just truth. So understanding both those things is real important to make sure you have all your safety equipment, gear, everything done. Don't put anything out on anything that you aren't really sure about that. So crafting your message. This is one of the things about planning that I really want to talk about for a minute, because so many times people say, well, what do you think? Well, I can tell you what I think, but it may not be the way you do it. It may not be your message. It may not be, it's your company. You have to have an idea of what you want. Does that make sense? So, it's not about what I think or what somebody else thinks. It's really about who is your company. Have you defined your company? Because every message you have is really around that company, because the most important thing you need to do in today's world is branding.
I think part of this crafting your message is it's important to remember that, your audience doesn't have the same understanding of what you do as you do, right? So you understand what you do at a much higher technical and proficient level than they ever will. So they really need someone to craft the message in a way that they can understand in layman's terms, to not be, patronizing, but to take the time to explain a difficult concept, or before starting to talk about what the problem is, to talk about, how a problem like this gets created in the first place and that sort of thing. I mean, that's, I think, something that viewers definitely appreciate. And I appreciate the time and the effort that goes into crafting that kind of message that really helps me understand something. I'll say this. I've noticed that, the longer a video is, the chances of it actually answering my question goes down. The shorter a video is, the likelihood of it answering my question goes up, because it is much more difficult to do a short video.
Mhm.
You may think that's the opposite, like it takes a lot more time and effort to create a long video. It just doesn't. A concise, crafted message takes effort, and it takes a lot of preparation and planning. And to condense what you could ramble on about for 20 minutes down into a 2-minute concise video really does take strategy and planning and crafting, and it's worth doing because you're going to connect with customers in a way that they truly appreciate.
Yeah, and I know that in history, you're going to have to tell me who it is, because you're much better with name recall than me. But there is a story about somebody that says exactly that. That if you want me to talk for 30 minutes, it's going to take me X amount of time.
Yeah.
You want to talk, if you want me to talk for 5 minutes, it's going to take me double that time. So, and it really does. It just takes more planning and setup and all those things in order to have a really concise, crafted message. And here's the thing about this too. We're going to get into something in a minute, but I want to say this. There's a difference between just showing people what you do and creating a very good, crafted, sustainable tutorial message of who you are as a company. Those are two different things. So, it's a pretty easy video to show what you do. It's another thing when you are really having a conversation that you want to draw your customers in. Two totally different types of messaging. So technical essentials. I'm going to talk about one thing, because y'all probably, a lot of y'all don't know this, but Carter and I both have really extensive video backgrounds. Mine's in lighting and sound, engineering mainly, and Carter has done a lot of editing. In fact, he's won awards for editing before. So we have different things that we look at when we're talking about technical essentials. The most important thing to me is, in the look and feel of your videos, is lighting. I mean, that's really, really an important piece of it. Now, if you have one of these doggone phones, though, this thing right here overcomes a lot of that. And I am so impressed with the newer phones that have come out. I will tell everybody that wants to go out and buy a big rig, a big this, a big that, if they get an iPhone and buy a really nice just hand stabilizer that kind of stabilizes it so you don't have the shakies. A lot of times I use a little switch that you can buy. I mean, it's probably $12, so that I use one hand up here, because what happens is you move the phone when you're trying to, do this and start everything. But I'm pretty good about holding up, and I can just click down here and start a video, stop a video, or start and I use that a whole lot when I'm doing handheld stuff. So those are just really some things that you can do, because those new phones really do correct low lighting, overlight. I mean, it's amazing.
They're pretty impressive.
I mean, yeah, it really is. And, it's, I don't mean this in a bad way or at all, but it's dummy proof in so many ways, that I think it's really a very, very good camera to actually take video with. Just recently, I talked to somebody who their marketing company said none of their videos were good enough to be online. And I said, to me, that's crazy. So what are you taking them with? And, it's the newest iPhone. And I'm like, it's a 4K video. You can't get much better than that. And most of the time, what I see is what my monitor puts out. I mean, if you're fuzzy or whatever, a lot of times it's the monitor that's the problem, and not the camera you used.
That could be very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know about you on the technical side. Those were the two things I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of shooting everything with your iPhone or your Samsung. I mean, it's the device that, I mean, there's so much video being done that way. People are very used to seeing video done that way. And so their expectations aren't rattled at all when they see video that's been done that way. It's like, oh, well, okay, they just accept it and we roll. But it's what you stick in front of the camera that matters more than the camera itself, is what I'm saying. The cameras have become so good and so ubiquitous that the camera is no longer the problem. The problem is what you bother to focus on, and how you're telling the story with the camera that really matters. I would say, in addition to that, some kind of editing software is necessary. And there's some great ones that are free, and they kind of, they're available when you get a new computer. It just comes with it. There's, we could go into, I don't want to get into like software reviews here, but just software that you feel comfortable with to put your video into and make simple edits and things, to make decisions about where to end a scene and start another one, or how to transition out of one thing into another, how to do title, put titles over the video so that people understand what they're seeing and those things. All of that helps to up the game and make it more professional. And most of the video editing software that I've seen is pretty easy now to learn how to use. And stay tuned, because AI is making it even easier.
Yeah.
And really, I'm seeing some just amazing things happen with some AI tools for video editing. So maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that one day soon.
Yeah. Before we get into this next one, look who's here.
Hey.
Hello, Mitchell. Good to see you. Glad you're here. I hope everything is going well there for you in Alaska. That's awesome. Keep it simple, stupid. That's from Chuck Roydhouse. Thanks, Chuck. Really appreciate that. You know what I feel about that is, the simplest it can be, the better it is for me. That's kind of it. And Jerry says to suggest to watch, what others in the industry, watch what they're producing. There's some companies that are knocking these out of the park, and they're seeing a great return, and it helps you build your community authority. Now, I agree with that, Jerry, somewhat, but I'm going to tell you what I think about those companies, because I know people who are creating a lot of stuff that aren't getting the same kind of bang for their buck. And it comes down to this: storytelling. You have to be able to tell a great story. I see and probably this comes from my background with my mother, who was an English teacher and taught journalism and essays and all that, in high school. But you start with, you have an opening, and then you have this middle part that there's a crescendo at the end, and you wrap it up at the end. I mean, that's storytelling. That's just base. And I see a lot of things that I've seen. The end is at the beginning. The beginning is not really a beginning. It just kind of, things are thrown in your face, and you go, okay, and there's no story. And the thing about storytelling is this: it doesn't have to be long.
No.
I think that's a big misstep there, that everybody thinks in telling a story, it has to be, a novel, and it doesn't. It just doesn't.
No, I mean, the essential arc of a story is, once upon a time, something happened, and then they lived happily ever after, right? So 3 points, right? It's establish, the setting, the problem, if you will, or the challenge. Establish what you did to meet the challenge or solve the problem, and then describe the final finished product and how happy everybody was with what happened, right? That right there, those 3 points, if you hit those in that order in your videos, you're telling a story already, and it's already compelling, because that's how our brains work. We look for that pattern, that 3-point pattern, in any of the stories that we tell or that we hear.
Yeah, and I really love, I'm a coach with Business Made Simple, and Don Miller is an author, and he came up with a story brand method, and I'm really a believer in that. And what I really like when we're talking about working with companies is when you tell a story, the first opening part of that story is the problem that you're solving for your customer. You have to know what that is because you start with that problem. If you start with that problem, and that problem, if you visualize it as a bruise and then kind of poke at that problem a little bit in that beginning of that story, and then come back and say, hey, here's the way that you can resolve this problem. And by the way, if you don't resolve it, you're going to have this. If you do resolve it with us, you're going to have this. And here's how you can work with us. Boom, boom, boom. Those are the conclusions. That's the story.
Yeah.
And if you stay with that, within that framework, there's a bunch of things that you can talk about as a company, but just stay within the framework and know what those problems are. And there are a lot of problems that a plumber solves multiple problems. An electrician solves multiple problems. Chimney sweep solves multiple problems. A lot of the problems chimney sweep solves, most people don't know they solve. They think they have to find a builder or somebody else. So, these are things that you can take those and really build on it and really create a really nice book of videos.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just really like that.
Mark Madden says, hey, from Wichita. Hey, Mark, glad you joined us.
So, talk a little bit, Carter, about promotion and sharing.
Yeah, I mean, what good is a story if nobody hears it, right? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, did it really make a splash on social media? So,
good question.
I think that's something that's important, is promoting what you do, what you take the time to create. It's, obviously, if you feel like it can be helpful to people, then putting it out there. Social media obviously is one of the easiest places to share it, but not always social media. Your website, using it in ads, using it in other formats and other places is a good strategy as well. You're gonna be able to also cross promote and use the video content that you've created to create still images that can be used on your website or used in your print materials, used in a lot of the things that you do in other ways and other places. So think about cross promotion, think about sharing, think about where you can put it so that it attracts more eyeballs.
Yeah, and I think we miss it when we don't take a video and we don't use it in multiple places, or just like this live, we make a podcast out of it. So yeah, we're not on the podcast, but people want to see our beautiful faces. They can see us here. If they just want to hear the information, they can get it on the go in the podcast. So using things in multiple ways are really, really important. And so I think we miss the boat. A lot of times I see people that have some great material, but they only use it one time. And that's the other thing about social. Don't be afraid to repost things, because I don't think you should repost it on the same day, the same week, but have the things that are evergreen. And if y'all don't know what that means, it means it can be used anytime. Have those things put away in a folder, that you've got a folder of evergreen material that you can pull back out. If you have a great something that you do for Christmas, pull it out the next year, use it again. I mean, there's not anything that says you can't or shouldn't do that. So, reusing these things are something that you can do and save yourself some time and money and effort.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So measuring success and feedback integration. This is probably one of the hardest things, mainly because, Facebook for the longest time was pushing, likes and this and that and all these things. And they just don't push them that much anymore. They very much are limiting reach still. They've gotten in trouble with it. I'm hoping that some of the stuff that's going on right now with this Google lawsuit, that Facebook is paying attention, TikTok, all the rest of them are paying attention to it. because it's making Google do some really significant shifting in some things. I'll tell you, it's messing up some of the stuff that marketing companies have been doing forever, and we're having to figure that out. But I'm just saying there are some necessary things, because what we are finding is your audience does not want to be sold on social. As much as you might want to sell on social, if you're selling all the time on social, then you're probably not going to have a lot of people there. They want a social engagement. They are really looking for engagement. So, one of the things that Carter and I are talking about doing next year is turning this podcast more into an AI type podcast to talk about all the different things in marketing that AI can do, make it easier, help with, those kind of things. If that's something that you think would be interesting to you, we'd love to know that. We've talked about it back and forth, because we think that, I'm just going to say it's not me thinking, it's the people that are a lot smarter than me are telling us that what's coming in the future, we better be ready.
Well, we can't get through a single AI Spark Live episode without talking about AI or mentioning it at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just some of the things that we've seen just in the last week. I've just gone, oh my word, I can't believe that this has improved this much. So, so we're really thinking that is the future, and we want to stay on top of that and make sure that you guys have the tools and knowledge and those kind of things to move forward in the future to keep your businesses strong. So that's probably the direction we're going to go. Just kind of let you know that going forward, since we're already in almost December. How you like that? Almost December.
Crazy.
Yeah. So Spark Live, like we said, also released as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podvine, or your favorite player. Next week, a lot of people don't even think about infographics, but there is a great avenue for infographics, especially in home services, that can really give your audience an idea about who you are and what you do. We're going to get into that next week.
Thanks to Alyssa, Jessica, Tyler, Lorelei, Chuck, and Mark for the thumbs ups and the hearts. Appreciate you letting us know that you were here and that you appreciated the content this week. Make sure that you leave us a comment too on Facebook or on YouTube if you're watching there, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks so much. Y'all have a great time till next week.